Hi, I'm Berit Stover.
I'm Beth Mund.
Welcome to Conscious Conversations on the Sacred Letter channel. Today, we want to invite you in to explore spiritual journeys, how we each have our own path that leads us to places that we could never have imagined, that also really opens us up. And want to talk to Beth today about her own spiritual journey and how she was able to bring forward and to connect with people on the other side to bring forward some profound messages. So, Beth, can you share a little bit? Like, have you always been spiritual, or how did this begin for you?
I have been spiritual most of my life. I just didn't know it. I remember sitting in class in sixth grade and everybody was learning math. And I was sitting there wondering why none of us were talking about why we were all here.
Mhm.
And I never told anybody because I thought it was strange, or if nobody was talking about it, I didn't think we were supposed to talk about it. And then I began writing back then. I'm a freelance writer now, and I transcribed the sacred letters that we have put into our book. But I was writing back when I was 9 and 10 years old, and some of those letters were channeled letters. I just didn't know it. And I could tell the difference between them and a general letter or a general creative writing piece that I did back then.
How could you discern the difference between those two?
So the symbolism that was in them, the 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 topic, um, the some of it felt dreamlike. What had come through versus just a 9-year-old telling a story of going to Disney World and going on the rides and having fun. They were much different. They were deeper, and I could really feel I could interpret the letters and the connection that I was already having back at that early age. And it's, like most things, when we hit adolescent, it went underground. And it wasn't until I had been married and had kids, and I was pregnant with my third child, my son, when I ended up with having a stillborn child. And that I went into an unimaginable grief. And this brought me to a place where my spiritual journey reopened. I went to go see a grief counselor, and she handed me a book that was written by Dr. Brian Weiss, and it was called Many Lives, Many Masters. Many of you might be familiar with that. And it reawoke my awareness that there was another side. And I began to question everything. Um, why did my son pass? Why do we live as long as we live? Some of us live longer lives, some of us live shorter lives. I began to question some of the choices I've made in my life. It seemed that everything was there for me to look at and examine, and it began a process of self-examination. And while I was healing from the grief, I experienced some challenging times. I struggle with a lack of control, because when someone passes suddenly from our lives, it's very traumatic, and we don't feel that we have any control. Only we have the same control as we did before. We just didn't know it. And so I decided I would go see, and I was having some anxiety. So I decided I would go contact a shaman. Now, most people, when they have anxiety, would probably contact the therapist. And I was guided to contact a shaman. I didn't ask why, I just did it. And that began my intuitive journey to just do what I've been guided to do. And I learned shamanic journeying. I had amazing experiences. And that's where I reopened the connection with the other side. But I was doing it um, within my awareness, not as a 9-year-old channeling a letter, or having an imaginary friend, or so on. So it really brought me to a place where I opened up to a whole nother world.
And describe some of the world that you did open up to. Like what was what started really unfolding for you?
So I had a number of amazing experiences that happened without warning. And I think that's really what the spiritual journey is about, because, we learn we hear about an experience someone has, or we read about something in a book, and that's the journey or the experience that we want. And from my experience, it doesn't happen that way. We have the awakening, or the out of body experience, or the near death experience that we're meant to have. And it, whatever works to bring us and wake us up to a different way of life. And so some of my experiences were, I traveled and I came across the Akashic Records, which is really our soul's writing about what we're here to do, what our soul has experienced in the past, what they're meant to do in the future. So I visited the place where the Akashic Records were. I knew it was the truth. And it was a large white marble building, and with pillars, and it was beautiful, high ceilings with just marble and glass everywhere, and white, very, very stark white. And on this podium was this huge book, and I knew that was my Akashic Records, and that's how it was shown to me. And I connected I began to journey and meet souls from the other side. I met Archangel Gabriel. I knew it was her. I didn't know how I knew. I just knew. And she had long red flowing hair, and she was guiding me along with another guide who was completely different. He looked to be someone in his 60s who was bald, and he was also one of my guides. And never quite got his name, but maybe someday it'll come to me. I began meditating on a regular basis, and I had an out-of-body experience while I was meditating. I don't recall exactly. I think it was a guided meditation, because we have guided meditations and we have breath work meditations. And all of a sudden, I was being shown the different roles that I've been playing in my life. And they started showing them to me one by one. And I was very much aware that I had chosen these roles, and I could choose to play them or not. I was no longer in the body, not being aware of any of this. It was like I was shown this higher perspective. And it's very hard to explain an out-of-body experience, except that you're always looking in or looking down on yourself, or looking in on something and seeing it as if you're outside of your body. Mm-hmm. And for example, I had someone in my life who was an addict, and they showed me that we were playing this role, or that he was the addict and I was the enabler. And what we were getting out of it, and why we were doing it, and that we could choose to do it or not. It didn't matter. The beautiful thing about when we have an out-of-body experience or connect with the other side is that it's all okay. It's all beautiful. It's all loving. They want what's best for us and the highest and best for us, but it's okay. We have total choice. We can experience it or not. And I knew that I could continue playing this role or not, and it would be okay. And they asked me if I wanted to see more roles of what I was playing, and they showed me a few more. And I said, that's okay. That's enough. I knew I could go back at some point and know more if I had chosen to.
It really speaks so much to what you're bringing up, of how our souls are constantly evolving. We're always learning whatever lessons we're meant to learn. But again, down here in Earth, we have choice, we have free will. So two things that would stand out. One is that choice. And the second is honoring and feeling into what you're allowing yourself to follow that intuition, to go to the shaman, to go through the experience with the Akashic Records and your out-of-body experience, and to have no expectations, but to take in what you're receiving and let it unfold. It's almost like a flower that's kind of opening. And but to honoring all of it without judgment,
Mhm.
to knowing that you're always loved and cared for, and but there's no judgment, and it's a continuum. We're a continuum.
Yeah.
So then fast forward, how did that bring you to really hearing from spirits, and then also your gift to hear and to be able to type up in just sheer minutes what you're receiving through automatic writing?
So I began to strictly follow my intuition. It took me a bunch of tries because I was hearing it all along, but not necessarily following it. And I know some of you can relate to that out there. And there was one night I went to bed and I had a glass of water and I put it on the floor. And I heard, this is the first time I realized I was hearing things specifically from my intuition, because I receive through hearing, I receive images, and I receive a very strong knowing that I'm to follow something, or that I'm to know something. And I heard, don't put the water on the floor, and I ignored it. And that's how we learn best sometimes. And I got up in the middle of the night and knocked it across the floor. The water splattered all over the place. And for whatever reason, that really got to me, that yes, that our intuition, no matter how small or how big, it's guiding us, that we're to follow it. And I began to, once I realized I was hearing things, I began to open up to more. And then I began to feel things. Like I would feel my grandmother. I was constantly burning the oatmeal that she had taught me to make. And then I felt her one morning in the kitchen, um, and she said, you need to I heard you need to put more water in, and not use so much milk. And that worked. And so they can, that was a visit from a loved one. That started to happen more and more. And I had incredible experiences where the oven light in my house was turning on and off, and that was the spirit connecting with me. So once I began opening up, then they began connecting with me, and it unfolded over time. I was always a writer, so the writing piece happened because I did freelance writing. I wrote a lot of parenting articles. I wrote short stories. And when Berit and I had gotten together and connected, I had felt someone, we were already connecting on a regular basis, text messaging, and I had felt somebody in my room, Louise Hay, who had passed just 3 or 4 weeks before, was in my room. And I, was unsure of why she was there. But she had, I ignored her and went to the other room, and then I came back, and she described the book that we were to put out, and the sacred letters that I was already receiving. I realized at some point that it got stronger. That I realized at some point I was a messenger, and that what I was hearing or what I was seeing, or what I was knowing, were messages that I was meant to pass on to someone. A dear friend of mine, I received a message for her, and I had to give it to her. It was a difficult message to give, but she received it beautifully. And then I knew that no matter what the message is, it's always healing. And I realized that whether it was through my writing or through speaking with someone, that I had to give these messages, because I would be filled with a amount of angst or anxiety. And I had the experience where there was a woman, I'm very connected with animals, and as well as people. I can connect with both. And I had heard that her dog had Lyme disease, and I didn't give her the message. I seem to always learn that way, that I don't do something, but that's okay. And then I had all this anxiety, and it lasted the whole day until I went back and gave her the message, and then the anxiety disappeared. So as I began writing more and more, and Berit and I were connecting, I was more and more aware of that anxiety when it was coming through, and that there was a message, and that I just sat down one time and began typing in what was coming through. And I was hearing it first, and then it was being transmitted onto paper. And that's the short version of how the sacred letters came about.
What I think is remarkable is when I think of so many of the sacred letters and the messages that you and I have passed to so many through the letters. And the letters are to a person, but they're actually, the messages are so universal. They're for all of us, right? The messages are speak to grief or change or healing from addiction or celebrating joys in life and so forth. There are many messages. But when I think of them, also when we pass so many of the messages, and what you've received, Beth, too, has been validated by the person that we're sending it to. So I think that is almost it reaffirms it, not that you necessarily need it, but we're always discerning, but to be able to gift people with that beautiful letter, and really what the other side that you're connecting with and that we're jointly connecting with is really sharing with us their reflections. They're sharing with us, not that they know everything, but they're sharing insight and a reflection from a much more expanded vantage point from which they're looking. Like you spoke earlier, how you kind of are outside looking in. They seem to be looking at a much longer spectrum and a more expanded viewpoint in which to gift us with these beautiful insights and love and inspiration and empowerment in these messages.
Well, for me, it was going through this process, my entire spiritual journey, but more specifically, this process of receiving these letters was very healing for me, because every time I receive a letter, I'm connecting with the other side, which is so full of love. And you just cannot help when you feel that energy. It's energy. And when you feel it, it's so loving that you feel that love that we don't always feel here. And it also allowed me to see that there is a method to the madness, is the best way to describe it, that I've been through so much in my life. I've had trauma, and I've had loss, and I've been through many different experiences, and yet each one seemed to open me up to another gift and take me further along in the spiritual journey and in my life of the path that I was meant to go. And I never liked it at the time, and it was really hard, and I went through a lot, but it was all, I don't think there's one thing that I can look back on and say that doesn't make sense that I went through it. And I wouldn't be the person that I am today, being able to do what I do and open up to the gifts that I have, had I not gone through that. And it all makes sense to me. And it's all been a gift, a difficult path, but nonetheless, it's been a gift. And that's what we're here. I've realized overall, that's what we're here for in life, is to grow, for our soul to grow, to evolve, to learn, to grow. And everything I've been through has I've opened up to more and more. And each one of my gifts seems to grow on each other, and it just continues to expand. That's the thing about our spiritual journeys, is we're never done learning. We're opening up every day to new things, and we're on new gifts and new opportunities, and we can't miss it. I've learned that on my journey, that it's not about getting to an end point. It's about doing a little bit better than we did the day before. And it's always been my goal. And if we miss something, we'll get another chance.
Yeah, we'll never miss out. Yeah, that we'll always circle back or in some way. But I think what's so beautiful, Beth, and just having known you just since 2016 and watching what you've brought through and how you've connected, is you've not only connected with the other side, but you've gifted so much love and connection for people to reconnect with the ones that they've loved, that they are missing. And animals too. I've seen so much that you've done that's been so healing and so loving. So anything else you want to share about your journey and where we're going, what to expect next?
When I look back on my life, the gifts that have opened up for me in my spiritual journey, it feels very often to me like I'm giving a voice to the voiceless. That we are surrounded by people, people who have passed, our animals, our ocean life, our the trees in nature. There is consciousness in everything, and it's not just one thing that we can tap into. We can tap into all of it. And there was one point in my life that I didn't have a voice, and so I don't think it's an accident that I have, my part of my mission is to give a voice to the voiceless. That I have found my voice and I've opened up to my gifts. And for anyone who's watching this or has ever had a thought about why am I here or what is my purpose, just keep asking those questions and find that voice and speak your truth. And that has brought me to where I'm at today. No matter how hard it's been, you can do it too. And once you find your mission, it's a gift. It's a gift from God. It's your life mission. It's your purpose. And just keep asking those questions and open up to it, and you'll find it too.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Beth. Thank you so much for all you're doing. And thank you for these beautiful sacred letters. For more information, you can find out more about Beth and the Sacred Letters and what she and I do together, and our new book, Living Beyond Fear, Sacred Letters from the Afterlife, below. So with that, thank you, Beth, for all you do, and for all of you out there, for all the connection and the love that you're pouring into the world. Beth and I send you our love. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.